Good evening and welcome to tonight's special broadcast as we take a closer look at Pennsylvania juries and their absence of young people.
And at the Department of Corrections initiative to cut prison inmate populations.
That's coming up right now.
Good evening, I'm Josh Charles.
And I'm Paige Ahrensmeyer. The Sixth Amendment ensures the accused the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. But finding an impartial jury is complex, and the process often leaves people out. As Ian Fitzgerald finds, young adults are often left out of the jury box in Pennsylvania courtrooms.
That's really when it comes down to it, what we need on jurors is we need decision makers. Sometimes that's harder to determine with a young person.
David Freed is a district attorney in Cumberland County. He's been selecting who can sit for jury duty for years, and during those years, he's had to make decisions of who gets to be a juror solely based off of looks.
Sometimes you do, in jury selection, have to judge a book by its cover because you only have a very limited amount of time, you have a very limited amount of information. So we have a little book with a little form that was filled out, maybe have a chance to ask one or two questions, and then we as lawyers have to make a determination right then.
Although citizens can start being selected for jury duty at the age of 18, they may have to wait another 12 years if they want to sit in seats, such as these.
Being a former prosecution and defense attorney, Dr. Stephanie Gerard has also had her fair share of jury selection. She believes it is more than just looks that decides if young people get picked.
Typically, trial attorneys such as myself, we don't value young people on a jury. And that is because most young people just haven't lived long enough to have a great deal of experience. And most young people are very passionate about what they believe in. They see the world really as black or white.
Although there may be some truth to these stereotypes, David Freed knows they're not always true.
As I've gotten older and I've learned more about trying cases, I've learned that that's not necessarily the case, and you have to look a little bit deeper into the person.
But it can be hard to look deeper into a person in such short time.
When I was doing jury selection, it was the most tense-filled moments of the trial for me, because it was like speed dating, but you were married to these people. You didn't have much time to get to know them, and yet you were going to be stuck with them, and they were going to decide whether the fate of your client.
Because of this quick selection process, young people seem to be the odd man out.
We make these shortcuts about who people are that do people a disservice, because of course they could be perfectly qualified to sit on a jury and make a fair and impartial decision based on the evidence. And we've already eliminated them because of who we think they are.
It seems if young people are to be more involved in courtrooms, the process of how people get picked will have to change.
Jury selection could be more inclusive of young people if the process changed to a first-come, first-served basis. Young people are often the target group at the courthouse for being eliminated from jury duty, but the selection process starts cutting them out well before they get to the courtroom.
Julia Wiegand joins us to sort out how young people get deselected from the very start of the process. Julia?
People get selected for jury duty by pulling names from voting registrations, licenses, and other formal documents. More than 8 million people held a Pennsylvania driver's license in 2014, and just over 75,000 of those were teenagers. Less than 1% of teens in Pennsylvania were selected for jury duty in 2014, and only 9% of registered voters in Pennsylvania are between the ages of 18 to 24. And since Pennsylvania has the 5th highest elderly population, using formal documents to select juries will more assuredly leave out young people. Dr. Stephen Lichman, a professor in pre-law, believes he knows a way to get more young people involved in court cases.
I'd like to get rid of peremptory challenges. I think they're a toxin on the system. And just, I don't like the idea of lawyers trying to manipulate a jury in their favor. Just have your random sample of people who show up and impanel them. Make sure none of them have any connections with either the parties of the litigation, and then just seat a jury and let's go.
To remove peremptory challenges, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals would have to decide if they are non-constitutional.
When we come back, why lawyers can shy away from picking young people to serve as jurors.
And later, we'll find out what it takes to reduce the state prison populations in Pennsylvania.
Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
You taught him how to hit a baseball, how to hit a receiver, the strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
Stephanie Gerard, a criminal justice professor at Shippensburg University, is a former public defender. She believes the system discriminates against young jurists.
The system is already rigged from the very beginning. I mean, and you have to such appreciate that. If we're really going to have a jury of our peers, yes, then everyone would be represented. But that's not what the system is about.
Dr. Gerard also believes fewer young people on the jury might be a good thing.
You haven't had the wide range of experience that would make you more kind or more accepting. And that's really what we find. With age becomes wisdom.
The system is designed for attorneys to select jurors who will best serve their clients.
Prosecutors and defenders are known to select jurors who look like the common man, someone who blends into everyday society. David Freed, Cumberland County's district attorney, has years of experience reading body language as a tool for selecting possible jurors.
If somebody's sitting there, I have 2 teenagers and a 10-year-old, right? And if somebody's sitting there like this and staring around like this and looking like they don't want to be there, I don't know that I want to pick a person who doesn't, who's giving off that kind of attitude.
Young people have a better chance of sitting on a jury by looking interested and dressing like they want to be there. Jury duty can be looked at as a chore more than a civic duty. If young people want their opinions to be heard, they're going to have to give some effort to be picked to sit on a trial.
Typical juries tend to be people between the ages of 30 and 60, but it seems even the preferred jurors aren't even showing up. On average, 32 million Americans get selected for jury duty each year, but only 8 million actually go. 3 million of those 32 million simply don't show up. David Freed says it's an important role for all citizens.
People do manage their civic responsibilities and show up. We don't ask for much for your privilege of citizenship in the United States. It's one of the things we ask for.
Although Freed would, like everyone who is called to show up to the court, he acknowledges there's no penalty for not participating. Jury selection is at the front end of the judicial process. Tonight we are also going to take a closer look at the end phase of the judicial system, the Department of Corrections, and specifically how the DOC is making changes to cut the numbers of inmates. The Department of Corrections for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has implemented a new initiative to help reform state prisons. The DOC has been trying to cut the population of state penitentiaries with a goal of 5% by 2020. Since the initiative began in 2012, the population has dropped on average 1% every year. With 4 years to go, the initiative is about to meet its goal ahead of schedule, and DOC Secretary John Wetzel wants officials to pick up the pace so this initiative can exceed expectations. According to Secretary Wetzel, 50,000 inmates are in Pennsylvania's 26 state prisons. On average, 20,000 of new inmates enter each year. Where the initiative is concerned, sentence length is just one factor in deciding how to cut the population. Haley Luke has the story.
The Department of Corrections for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has a difficult job when deciding which inmates they want to aid this monumental initiative. Sentencing is something that could help Secretary Wetzel and his administrators reach their goal. What is sentencing? Shippensburg University criminal justice professor Dr. Stephanie Gerard has inside intel on how sentencing works.
One thing that people have to realize is that sentencing is done for the offender, not the crime. So even though you might have 5 people who commit a murder, they might all get different sentences because we sentence the person and not necessarily the crime.
Gerard also says that when sentencing an individual, their life history does play a role.
Most of the time, it is the defendant themselves, the characteristics of the defendant themselves, that determines how long they're going to go away for, because most sentences are given in a range of years.
Carlisle District Attorney David Freed adds that risk is something that needs to be addressed.
We need to assess risk and make sure that we're doing that appropriately as early as we can in the process, so that when they get in, they can have appropriate programming in the prison, move out through halfway houses or step downs to get that population reduced.
Addiction and drugs can't be overlooked.
We're in the midst of this huge drug crisis right now all over the country, and no less in Pennsylvania. One of the things that we need to do well is identify users as opposed to dealers. And treat the users. Sometimes the dealers just have to be locked up.
Alternatives to prison sentencing also need to be utilized if the DOC wants to achieve its goal.
Electronic monitoring, perhaps you've seen people, I know I've seen them in Walmart, they have electronic bracelets on. Halfway houses, putting them on probation, so where they don't go directly to jail.
Gerard leaves a piece of advice for Secretary Wetzel.
What I would do is get more trusted advisors and delegate the responsibility to get more people looking at more qualified candidates who then they could bring to me for the final sign-off.
For SUTV News, I'm Haley Luke.
Drugs and alcohol are more prevalent today than ever, and addiction is a big problem. If you or anyone you know is struggling with addiction, there are resources available for you to get help. Call 1-800-662-HELP for the National Drug and Alcohol Treatment Hotline.
Experts say reducing prison populations will require more than just cutting down on criminal activity. Finding another place for inmates with mental health issues could go a long way in reducing populations. Shippensburg criminal justice professor Dr. Stephanie Gerard, a former prosecution and defense attorney, says the system has to take a look at who it is incarcerating.
State mental hospital was shut down. What that meant was the criminal justice system then became the default mental health hospital. So many of our offenders are suffering from debilitating mental health issues.
Gerard also believes problems could arise if mental ill are sentenced to treatment.
You can't force them to take medication, or you can't, there's no real resources to give them appropriate therapy. So it is a real strain on the prison population, particularly because they mentally ill offenders tend to be a danger to themselves and others.
Influences such as education and drug and alcohol addiction play a role in the difficult decision of who is fit to leave the state level and either be moved to a halfway house or released completely.
On July 5, 2012, Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett signed Senate Bill 100 into law. The law is more commonly known as the Criminal Justice Reform Act. This justice reinvestment has helped the PA Department of Corrections since 2012. The law allows the correction officials to focus on the inmates and create programs for education and job training. The hope is each inmate who takes a part in these programs will get education to help them once they leave prison, in hopes it will prevent them from committing future crimes. Secretary Wetzel believes this new law will help the prison population reduction initiative.
This new law wasn't the beginning of the push to get people appropriate help while on the inside.
I've been involved for a long time in trying to come up with programs to divert people from jail or to get people out, once they've completed the appropriate programming, try to reintegrate them back into society.
The county level also has a partnership with the state corrections and are working together to reach a common goal.
When we come back, the Carlisle District Attorney sheds some light on the personalities the DOC comes into contact with when trying to reduce prison population.
And a look at the considerations given to inmates to release back into society.
Stay tuned.
all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
We taught him how to hit a baseball, how to hit a receiver, the strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
The Department of Corrections works closely with the county court system and the district attorney on sentencing. Carlisle District Attorney David Freed says there are populations who can be released and will not be a threat to society.
The conversation we need to be having in this country now is we've done a good job with our nonviolent offenders. We still have a category of sort of violent but less violent offenders. We have to figure out how to deal with them, because if we really want to get to prison population, we have to deal with them.
As District Attorney, Freed is also trying to aid this initiative in his work.
What I can do as a county prosecutor is I can make sure that I'm not sending people to the state prison who don't need to be there. That I'm treating addicts, I'm treating people here at the county level that we can deal with so that they can focus on maybe that tougher population, because that's who should be there.
Secretary Wetzel has all of these factors to consider when making his final decision. DOC has so much to consider, as you can see: education, drugs, and alcohol, and mental health. Secretary Wetzel will rely on advisors to help him make these decisions.
Julia joins us with a closer look at the makeup of the prison population and who might be eligible to leave.
Just about the only thing prisoners have in common is they've been convicted of breaking the law, but the reasons why are as numerous as the people there. 50% of all incarcerated people do not have a high school diploma. Being uneducated may have even played a part in why these people ended up in state prison in the first place. So officials need to be working on programming inside of jail to educate prisoners, so when they are released, their education will provide them the skills they need to avoid the cycle of breaking the law again. 70% of inmates have some sort of substance abuse problem or addiction. Their sobriety or chance of success at staying clean is a consideration in whether they can be released from prison back into society or if they need to be in a rehabilitation therapy program. And finally, 28% of the prison population is mentally ill. Mentally ill people must be cared for, and there is nowhere to place mentally ill inmates if they were released. Our prisons have become the default mental health system. It's a big job, but the initiative has been working. That's it for stats. Let's head back over to the desk.
That's it for this special segment of SUTV News. We will be back this Thursday for a regularly scheduled weekly newscast at 7 p.m. on Campus Channel 21 and Comcast Channel 82.
As always, tune in to find out what's happening around campus, world news, and entertainment. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm Paige Aaronsmeyer.
And I'm Josh Charles. Have a great Thanksgiving break.